No one agreed on when first contact truly happened. Some said it was the moment the signals were detected, structured, deliberate, unmistakably artificial. Others argued it was when the ships appeared, sliding silently into orbit like shadows cast by something far larger than the human mind could grasp. But history would remember first contact for what came next. The day Earth burned. At first, there was hope. The alien vessels, sleek, obsidian constructs that seemed to drink in the light around them, made no aggressive moves. They hovered above major population centers, perfectly still, perfectly silent. No weapons fire, no demands, no translation attempts, just presence. Humanity did what it always did when faced with the unknown. It reached out. Messages were sent in every language, every format: mathematics, art, music, even fragments of human DNA encoded in data streams. Satellites broadcast greetings. Governments scrambled to coordinate a unified response. For the first time in history, humanity stood together, not as nations, but as a species. "We are here," the messages said. "We are ready." For 6 hours, the ships did nothing. Then, without warning, the sky turned white. Orbital strikes fell with surgical precision. Cities vanished before alarms could finish sounding. New York, Beijing, Mumbai, Lagos, reduced to expanding rings of ash and fire in seconds. Communications fractured into chaos. Military systems activated too late, their defenses useless against weapons they couldn't understand. There was no declaration of war, no ultimatum, just annihilation. Panic spread faster than the destruction itself. Civilian broadcasts captured the end of the world in real time, people running, screaming, praying as the heavens opened above them. Entire continents went dark as power grids collapsed. The oceans boiled in places where the strikes hit hardest. The atmosphere itself seemed to tremble. And still, the ships said nothing. Humanity fought back, because that's what it did. Missiles launched. Fighters scrambled. Experimental weapons, never meant for open war, were deployed in desperation. A handful of alien vessels were struck. One even broke apart under concentrated fire, its black hull fracturing like glass. It changed nothing. For every ship that fell, 10 more took its place. Within hours, organized resistance was gone. Governments ceased to function. Military command structures disintegrated. The world's greatest cities were craters, their histories erased in firestorms visible from orbit. But humanity did not vanish. It endured. Deep beneath the surface, in bunkers never meant to see use, in ships already leaving orbit when the attack began, in scattered outposts across the solar system, miners, researchers, forgotten crews who suddenly became the last witnesses of a dying world. They listened as Earth fell silent, and in that silence, something changed. The fear didn't disappear. The grief didn't fade. But beneath it, something harder began to form, something cold, unyielding. Memory. Because humanity, above all else, remembered. The final transmission didn't come from a government or a military command. It came from a civilian relay, damaged, barely functional, its signal weak but persistent as it pushed out into the void. A single sentence, repeated over and over again, carried on every remaining frequency. "We will remember." The alien fleet lingered for a short while after that, as if confirming the kill. Then, just as silently as they had come, they left. Behind them, Earth burned, and scattered among the stars, the survivors listened, and did not forget. The galaxy moved on. Empires rose and fell. Trade routes shifted. Wars were fought over resources, ideology, and pride. Entire civilizations vanished without leaving so much as a whisper behind. In a universe as vast and indifferent as theirs, extinction was not remarkable. It was expected. And humanity became a rumor. At first, there had been curiosity. The species that had been erased in a single day, the one that had dared to fire back, that had destroyed even a handful of the invaders' ships, was discussed in quiet circles. Analysts debated their potential. Historians recorded their brief, violent end. Then, as decades passed, interest faded. A century later, they were a footnote. 2 centuries, and they were a myth. 3, and no one spoke of them at all, except in the dark, because something didn't quite add up. Scattered reports began to surface along the edges of known space. Mining colonies losing contact without warning. Patrol ships vanishing between systems. Listening posts picking up faint, structured signals, too precise to be natural, too brief to trace. At first, it was dismissed. Pirates. Malfunctions. Sensor ghosts. Until the wreckage started appearing. Drifting hulks of military vessels, their hulls breached with impossible precision. No signs of boarding. No survivors. No distress calls logged. Just silence, and the unmistakable evidence of weapons no known power claimed to possess. Whispers spread again. Ghosts, they said. The word caught on. Entire sectors began to refer to the phenomenon as ghost activity. Ships would alter course to avoid certain regions of space. Trade lanes shifted subtly, as if guided by an instinct no one wanted to admit they had. And still, no one said the word human, because that would mean they had survived. And survival, after what had been done to them, was a dangerous thought. Far beyond the reach of those fearful whispers, hidden in the void between stars, humanity endured. They had not rebuilt what they were. They had become something else. The survivors, those who had escaped in the chaos, those who had been off-world when Earth burned, those who had clawed their way out of shattered bunkers, found one another over time. It took years, decades, generations, but they came together. Not as nations, not as cultures, as one. Old divisions died with Earth. There were no borders anymore, no flags to rally behind, only a shared memory, etched into every mind, passed down with absolute clarity. This is what was taken from us, and this is who took it. They learned from the attack. Every fragment of data, every recorded second of the invasion, was studied, dissected, understood. Alien technology was salvaged from the few ships humanity had managed to destroy. Reverse-engineered, improved, weaponized. Their ships became faster, their weapons quieter, their strategies colder. They did not build for defense. They built for inevitability. Children were raised on truth, not comfort. They were shown what Earth had been, and what it had become. They were taught languages long since lost, histories of a world they would never see, and the names of the billions who had died in fire. Not to mourn, to remember. And as the centuries stretched on, humanity perfected one thing above all else: patience. They did not announce themselves. They did not seek allies. They did not retaliate blindly. They waited. They watched. They prepared. And in the silent darkness between stars, a fleet unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen began to gather. Unseen, untracked, unstoppable. The galaxy believed humanity was gone. That belief would be its greatest mistake. The first confirmed sighting lasted 17 seconds. A patrol frigate on the outer edge of the Varelian trade corridor picked up an anomaly, No transponder, no identifiable energy signature, just a distortion against the star field, like space itself had briefly forgotten how to behave. The crew barely had time to react. Sensors spiked. Systems lagged. And then, for a fraction of a moment, something appeared alongside them. Angular. Silent. Wrong. Then it was gone. The official report listed it as a sensor malfunction. 2 hours later, the frigate drifted into a nearby shipping lane. Power dead. Crew unresponsive. Hull sliced open with surgical precision. No weapons discharge detected. No signs of boarding. Just absence. This time, no one called it a malfunction. Within weeks, similar incidents began to surface across multiple systems. Always the same pattern. A flicker on sensors. A moment of distortion. Then silence. Ships disappeared. Stations went dark. Convoys arrived at their destinations, missing vessels no one could account for. And always, there were no survivors. Fear spread quietly, the way it always does when no one wants to admit it's there. Official channels dismissed the reports, but captains began altering routes. Crews whispered in low tones. Entire sectors developed reputations, places where signals died and ships simply stopped existing. The word returned. Ghosts. But this time it carried weight, because someone had started putting the pieces together. The destroyed vessels weren't random. The targets weren't chosen by chance. When analysts overlaid the incidents, a pattern began to emerge, one so precise it couldn't be ignored. Every ship that vanished, every station that went dark, every outpost that fell silent, they all belonged to one of the species, the Alliance, the same Alliance that had burned Earth. At first, the realization was dismissed as coincidence. The galaxy was vast, and those species controlled a significant portion of it. Of course they would appear frequently in any dataset, but the deeper the analysis went, the harder it became to deny. No other factions were being touched. No neutral worlds. No independent traders. No unrelated powers. Only them. And the strikes were escalating. What had once been isolated disappearances turned into coordinated losses. Entire fleets failed to report in. Strategic installations vanished overnight. Supply chains began to fracture under the weight of unexplained attrition. Still, there was no declaration. No message. Just the quiet, methodical removal of assets, as if someone was peeling away layers of strength, one precise cut at a time. Then came the recording. Recovered from a damaged surveillance buoy near a destroyed outpost, it was fragmented, corrupted, barely readable. Most of it was static and broken data. But for 3 seconds, the image stabilized. Long enough to see it. A ship. Not alien. Not any design recognized in the known galaxy. Human. The hull was darker than void, absorbing light instead of reflecting it. Its shape was sharp, purposeful, built with no regard for aesthetics, only function. Weapons arrays were visible, but dormant. Engines emitted no detectable signature. It did not look advanced. It looked inevitable. The footage ended as the outpost was cut apart in a flash of silent light. Panic followed. Emergency councils convened. Military forces mobilized. Old alliances tightened their grip, while new ones formed out of mutual fear. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy faced something it did not understand, something it could not predict. And in hushed chambers, behind sealed doors, a word was finally spoken aloud. Humanity. They had survived. And they were no longer hiding. They announced themselves with silence. No grand declaration. No broadcast across the stars. No warnings issued to those who had once burned their world to ash. Just a moment, brief, almost imperceptible, when every major system of the Alliance experienced the same anomaly. Sensors flickered. Clocks desynchronized. And then, everywhere at once, humanity arrived. They did not emerge from hyperspace in flashes of light or storms of energy. They were simply there, as if they had always been waiting just beyond perception. Hundreds of ships, then thousands, positioned with impossible precision around shipyards, command stations, defense grids, and planetary strongholds. The Alliance fleets scrambled. Orders were shouted. Weapons powered up. Defensive screens surged to life across entire systems. For a fraction of a moment, it seemed as though the galaxy might descend into chaos. But humanity did not fire. Not yet. Instead, a message appeared. Every screen, every channel, every frequency, clear, unmistakable, in every known language. A single line. We remember. And then, the war began. It was not chaos. It was execution. Human ships moved with terrifying coordination, their formations shifting like a living organism. They struck not at random, but at the exact points that held the Alliance together. Command vessels, communication relays, logistical hubs. Each target was eliminated with absolute precision. No wasted motion. No unnecessary destruction. Entire fleets found themselves blind and leaderless within minutes, their coordination shattered before they could even fire effectively. Defensive platforms were disabled rather than destroyed, left drifting uselessly in orbit. Supply lines collapsed in real time, cut apart with surgical strikes that left no room for recovery. The Alliance fought back. They had numbers. They had power. They had centuries of dominance behind them. Their fleets engaged with overwhelming force, unleashing weapons capable of tearing moons apart. And for the first time since Earth burned, human ships were hit. Some were destroyed. Others drifted, broken but not silent. But for every human vessel that fell, 10 Alliance ships followed. Because humanity had learned. Every engagement was recorded, adapted to, improved upon in real time. Their tactics evolved with each passing second, closing every gap, countering every strategy. This was not a battle humanity intended to win. It was one they had already solved. Across dozens of systems, the same pattern unfolded. Defenses neutralized. Fleets dismantled. Infrastructure erased with methodical precision. Worlds that had once sent fire raining down on Earth now watched their skies fill with something far worse. Judgment. And still, humanity did not strike the planets themselves. Not yet. Instead, they waited. Long enough for the realization to spread. Long enough for the leaders of the Alliance to understand exactly what was happening. Then, a second message was delivered. This time, it came from a single ship positioned at the heart of the Alliance's oldest homeworld. Its voice was calm, human, unshaken by the scale of what it had already done. You came to our world without warning, it said. You offered no terms, no mercy. A pause. You will be given both. For the first time since the war began, humanity hesitated. A choice. Surrender, and face judgment. Or resist, and face extinction. The galaxy held its breath. Because now, at last, humanity had been heard. The galaxy chose. Not all at once. Not cleanly. Some worlds surrendered within hours. their leaders broadcasting pleas for mercy across every open channel. Others resisted to the very end, pride and fear outweighing reason as their defenses lit the skies in futile defiance. Humanity responded the same way it always had. Precisely. Worlds that surrendered were disarmed, their fleets dismantled, their weapons seized or destroyed. Orbital platforms were taken offline. Military command structures were erased, not with fire, but with absolute control. Human ships settled into silent watch above them, unyielding but still. There was no celebration, no cruelty, only enforcement. On the worlds that resisted, the outcome was different. Humanity did not glass them. It did not unleash the kind of annihilation that had once turned Earth into a scar of ash and silence. It did something far more terrifying. It made examples. Military targets were erased first, fleets shattered, command centers reduced to debris. Then infrastructure followed. Power grids failed. Shipyards vanished. The engines of war were dismantled piece by piece until nothing remained that could threaten again. Cities were spared. Civilians lived. But they watched their power crumble, their dominance collapse into nothing, and they understood. This was not revenge driven by rage. This was memory, made real. System by system, the war ended, not in a final battle, but in a gradual, undeniable shift. The alliance that had once burned Earth ceased to exist. In its place remained fractured remnants, subdued and silent under the watchful presence of a species long thought extinct. Humanity did not claim territory. It did not rebuild an empire. It did not take what had been taken from it. Instead, it established something new, a doctrine. Every world that remained was given the same terms. No unprovoked aggression. No expansion through force. No weapons capable of planetary-scale destruction. Violations would not be debated. They would be answered. And everyone believed them, because they had seen what humanity could do. Years passed. Then decades. Trade resumed, cautiously at first, then with growing confidence. Former enemies adapted to a galaxy where humanity existed not as conquerors, but as something far more unsettling. Observers, guardians, judges. Human ships were rarely seen, but always felt. A presence at the edge of perception. A certainty that somewhere, just beyond the reach of sensors, they were watching, waiting, remembering. For humanity, victory was not what they had imagined. There was no home to return to. Earth remained a dead world, its surface still marked by the scars of that first day. Some visited it, pilgrimages made in silence, to walk among the ruins, to stand where oceans had once breathed and cities had once reached for the sky. They did not try to rebuild it. Some things were not meant to be restored. Instead, they carried it with them, in stories, in names, in the quiet, unbreakable truth passed from one generation to the next. This is what we lost, and this is why we endure. In time, the galaxy came to understand that humanity's greatest weapon was not its ships, or its technology, or its strategy. It was its memory, because while others forgot, while time dulled their edges and softened their histories, humanity never did. And in the silent spaces between stars, where their fleets drifted unseen, that truth remained constant. They had been victims once. They would never be again. The final record of the war, preserved in human archives and whispered across countless worlds, ended with a single line. We don't forgive. We don't forget. We remember. So no one else has to burn.